You are listening to A Southern View of the Invasion of the Southern States and War of 1861 to 65 by Samuel A'Court Ashe. Narrated by Will Stauff. Preface. The States. Originally, there was no connection between the settlements along the coast. In 1776, they held a meeting and declared their separation from England, and asserted that each state was a free, independent, and sovereign state, and by a treaty of peace that was admitted by England. In 1781, the states entered into a confederacy and again declared the independence and sovereignty of each state. In 1788, a union was proposed to go into effect between any 9 states that ratified the Constitution. 11 states ratified the Constitution, and it went into operation between them. George Washington was elected president of the 11 states. In ratifying that Constitution, Virginia and New York particularly affirmed that the people of any state had a right to withdraw from the Union, and there was general assent to that claim, and it was taught in the textbook at West Point. There arose at various times differences between the southern states and the northern states, but all these were peaceably settled except as to African slavery. For some cause, South Carolina seceded in December 1860 and presently was joined by 6 other southern states. Neither Congress nor the President took any action against these states, but at length Congress passed a measure proposing that the states should amend the Constitution and prohibit Congress from interfering with Negro slavery in any state, with the expectation that such an amendment would lead the seceded states to return. Presently, the new president was led to deny the right of a state to withdraw from the Union, and he started a war against the seceded states and called on the other states to furnish troops for his war. When North Carolina and Virginia and other southern states were called on to furnish troops to fight the seceded states, North Carolina said, "You can get no soldiers from the state to fight your unholy war." And North Carolina withdrew from the Union, and so did Virginia and 2 other states. Then the Supreme Court, in a case before it, declared that under the Constitution, the President had no right to make war, and the Constitution did not give Congress the right to make war on any state. So it mentioned the war as one between the northern and southern states, and said the right of the matter in dispute was to be determined by the wager of battle, thus ignoring the light and justice of the claim in dispute. And so the northern states conquered those that had seceded. Chapter 1. The Slave Trade. In the library of the State College at Raleigh, North Carolina, there is a notable book of some 350 pages and 49 illustrations, the 15th publication of the Marine Research Society of Salem, Massachusetts, and published in Vermont, the title being Slave Ships Enslaving. The introduction was written by a British Navy officer, and the text is by George F. Dow. Within 10 years after the discovery of America, the Spaniards began to transport Africans to work in their possessions, and all the maritime nations of Europe followed their example. And during the next 250 years, the English transported twice as many as all other countries put together. They began in Queen Elizabeth's time, kept it up in the next reign, and in 1662, the Duke of York undertook to transport to the British colonies 3,000 slaves every year. 10 years later, the king himself became interested and, under contract, England got from Spain the exclusive right to supply the Spanish colonies, and the King of England and the King of Spain each received 1/4 of the profits. Between 1680 to 88, England had 249 slave ships. From 1713, for 20 years, 15,000 slaves were annually brought to America. In 1786, England brought over 97,000 slaves. During 11 years, 1783 to 93, Liverpool owned 878 vessels in this trade and imported many thousands of slaves in the West Indies. They were worth some £15 million of that period, equal to about $150 million now. While Liverpool was the chief port for this trade, Bristol was a close second. Then over here, New England was not slow. Massachusetts started in 1638. However, Rhode Island became the rival of Liverpool.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?